there comes a moment when you realize the very sensitivity that once left you drowning in other people's storms has quietly forged something inside you that no one can reach. You no longer flinch at silence. You no longer bend yourself into shapes to be loved, and the people around you can sense it. They feel a stillness in you that unnerves them. What happened? How did you go from emotional exhaustion to an unshakable core that even the sharpest manipulation can't penetrate? In the next half hour, I'll walk you through 5 profound psychological shifts rooted in the work of Carl Jung that transform an empath from someone easily drained into someone who becomes unbreakable with age, not through hardening, but through a depth so grounded that very little can disturb it anymore. And here's the truth most never say out loud. The greatest strength of deeply feeling people was never their capacity to feel. It was everything they were forced to endure in order to become themselves. Chapter 1. They stop reshaping themselves for approval. The first shift that makes an empath unshakable with age is this. They finally release the desperate need to be liked by everyone. It's a paradox. The less they chase universal approval, the more anchored they become, and that quiet firmness unsettles those who once controlled them through emotional withdrawal. For years, many empaths live like water, constantly pouring themselves into whatever container others demand. Around angry people, they soften their voice. Around the emotionally volatile, they become excessively patient. In tense rooms, they disappear into silence to avoid discomfort. They call this maturity, but often it's just a slow erasure of self in exchange for being kept. Carl Jung called this outer performance the persona, the social mask we wear to survive. For an empath, that mask rarely takes the form of dominance or perfection. It takes the form of the accommodating one, the endlessly understanding one, the one who always monitors the emotional weather before daring to be themselves. And here's the quiet tragedy. Wear that mask too long, and you start measuring your worth entirely through other people's satisfaction with you. A smile means you're enough. A frown means you must have failed. A fracture in a relationship sends you scrambling to find your fault first. Modern psychology sometimes links this to the fawn response, a survival pattern where, instead of fighting or fleeing, you become so agreeable that rejection finds no foothold. But that very survival strategy becomes a cage, because suddenly, you can't tell where your real emotions end and the performance begins. Then age does its slow work, not through one dramatic event, but through hundreds of tiny heartbreaks. The times you made yourself easy to love and were still left. The times you swallowed your truth to keep the peace and still watched the relationship shatter. The times you bent your boundaries into nothing and still heard the other person say, "I never really knew you." Eventually, a painful clarity emerges. Some connections survive only as long as you distort yourself to fit another person's expectations. That's the turning point. Because once a person stops needing everyone's approval, they become extraordinarily difficult to manipulate. The silent treatment no longer sends them into panic. Disappointment from others no longer translates automatically into guilt. They begin to grasp that someone being unhappy with them doesn't mean they're wrong. And that's why this transformation frightens people. The world grew accustomed to the empath who was always gentle, always the first to repair, always available to absorb tension. When that stops, something shifts in the atmosphere. Others sense that this person can no longer be controlled through the fear of being disliked. Jung once observed that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But before that, many of us must pass through a devastating recognition. We spent years living as the version that made everyone else comfortable. There's a powerful image from architecture that mirrors this. When a great arch is still under construction, builders prop up temporary wooden supports beneath it. Once the keystone locks into place, every one of those supports is removed. Young empaths rely on external validation like scaffolding, but with time, they build an internal structure, a self-worth that isn't dependent on constant outside reinforcement. And that's what makes them appear formidable. Not coldness, not aggression, but the calm of someone who no longer needs to be approved of to know they exist. They begin walking through life with a different kind of peace. Not the indifference of someone who stopped caring, but the quiet steadiness of someone who finally understands that their value isn't measured by how many people they can satisfy. And the moment an empath stops living solely to be loved, something else begins to stir. They stop looking at people through desperate hope and start seeing through essence. Chapter 2. They learn to see through human nature. The second transformation. They become unbreakable because they see through the surface of people. There's something more dangerous than meeting a bad person. It's meeting someone who hides their darkness extremely well and realizing you've been reading the script, not the soul. When empaths are young, they tend to view others through the lens of emotional sincerity. They believe words over repeated patterns. If someone says "I care," they accept it. If someone claims to love them, they assume the feeling is true. Their nature is to dive into emotional depth, not emotional defense. But life, especially through repeated betrayals, teaches them a far more unsettling lesson. Human beings don't always operate from the part they show the world. In Jung's framework, every person carries a shadow, the hidden side containing envy, insecurity, unacknowledged desires, and instincts they refuse to own. The more fiercely a person denies that darkness, the more it leaks out through tiny, uncontrollable signals. The way their voice shifts when they're not getting what they want. The flicker of resentment that appears for a split second before a smile covers it. The sudden coldness when your life improves in ways theirs hasn't. Mature empaths develop an uncomfortable skill. They stop listening to words in isolation and start reading the space between words. They notice the gaps. A man named Daniel once told me it took him over a decade to realize his closest friend had never genuinely celebrated his successes. Every time Daniel struggled, this friend appeared with warmth and comfort. But whenever Daniel's life brightened, the friend grew subtly dismissive. Well, timing was lucky, I suppose. It wasn't until middle age that Daniel understood. Some people need you to stay beneath them to feel safe. And the moment he saw that pattern clearly was also the moment he began perceiving people through their emotional blueprint, not their social presentation. In Renaissance art, there's a technique called sfumato, the subtle blurring of edges that allows a face to emerge from shadow. The real structure of a person isn't revealed in full light when they're performing goodness. It's revealed in the shadows, in unguarded moments, when pressure mounts or jealousy flares. Mature empaths gradually acquire a kind of psychological precision that makes people uneasy. It isn't supernatural intuition. It's the result of decades watching the same unconscious patterns resurface behind different faces. After witnessing the same manipulations enough times, they understand that human nature often operates through predictable hidden currents. Jung wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." Older empaths begin to see the unconscious drives animating people, sometimes even before those people recognize it themselves. They detect that someone constantly criticizing others is likely wrestling with deep inadequacy. They sense that those who aggressively perform moral purity are often fighting suppressed desires. They understand that much of the anger directed at them isn't about the present moment at all. It's old, unhealed pain seeking a target. This is why they're no longer easily deceived by charm. In youth, they were captivated by confidence and beautiful words. But with age, they learn that charisma and depth are completely different things. Some people enter a room like stage lights, bright, magnetic, impossible to ignore. Others resemble the deep ocean at midnight. The quieter they become, the more impossible they are to truly see through. And what truly unsettles others is the unspoken awareness that the empath sees more than they say aloud. Deep down, human beings can sense when their mask isn't fully working anymore. The presence of an experienced empath often feels like an unnaturally still lake, so silent that it reflects back the very parts you've been hiding from yourself. That's what makes them frightening with age. Not bitterness, but the end of illusions. They see essence now. And someone who sees essence is very difficult to deceive twice. If you've ever felt the sting of misjudging someone you trusted completely, if you've realized someone was gentle only while they still needed something from you, drop a word in the comments. Something simple. I once saw wrong. Not to condemn, but to remind each other that seeing human nature clearly doesn't make us cold. It teaches us how to protect the sincere part of ourselves a little more carefully. Someone reading those comments might realize for the first time they weren't too sensitive. They were just beginning to awaken from illusions they once believed were real. But seeing through others is still not the hardest journey, because eventually, the deepest confrontation every human being must face is the emptiness inside themselves. Chapter 3. They stop fearing solitude. The third transformation, they become unbreakable because they've made peace with being alone. Some fears don't arrive with loud noises. They creep in during silent nights when the phone stays dark, when the only sound is your own breathing, when you're forced to confront the question you've spent years running from. If nobody remains beside me, what is left of me? For many empathic people, this is the hardest passage of all. In their youth, they often feel they must always be connected to something outside themselves, not because they're weak, but because their inner world is so vast that prolonged silence can become a terrifying space. They fill the quiet with music, endless conversations, notifications, anything to reassure themselves that they're still tethered to the world. What they truly fear isn't necessarily losing a specific person. It's confronting the emptiness that surfaces when all familiar noise disappears. That's why some empaths stay too long in relationships that have emotionally died, not because they can't see the decay, but because they dread returning to the silence of their own company once everything ends. In many mystical traditions, there's a phase called the dark night of the soul, a period where every familiar support falls away, and you're left alone with your interior wilderness. From Jung's perspective, this is also a crucial stage of maturation. He understood that certain layers of the psyche never reveal themselves, while you're constantly using the outer world to escape your inner life. That's why life, in one way or another, almost always pushes empaths into long stretches of solitude, sometimes after a painful separation, sometimes through the gradual realization that they no longer resonate with environments that once felt like home. At first, it feels like being dropped into the middle of the ocean at night. Nothing to cling to, no noise to distract from your deepest thoughts. Jung wrote, "Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes." But the price of awakening is often a season where nothing stands between you and your own mind anymore. And this is where the quiet transformation begins. After enough nights sitting alone with their emotions, mature empaths discover that inner emptiness isn't as terrifying as they once believed. What truly frightened them before was that they'd never learned how to rest peacefully in their own presence without frantically searching for something to fill the silence. I think of the early deep-sea explorers who ventured into the abyssal zone. What unnerved them most wasn't the pressure or the darkness. It was the absolute stillness. Miles of water with no movement, no sound. Many panicked because they felt disconnected from the living world. Yet those who endured that silence returned with a depth of calm that surface sailors couldn't understand. Mature empaths undergo something similar. They once viewed inner silence as a void. Moving through it gradually built an entirely different kind of depth inside them. They stop seeking ways to escape alone time. They stop interpreting silence as evidence of loss. They stop feeling small simply because no one is beside them for a period. And in that moment, a profound inner freedom takes shape. Most human beings spend their lives terrified of emptiness, filling every schedule, every relationship, every spare minute with noise to avoid confronting themselves. But older empaths move through that fear. They learn to sit quietly with their inner world without panicking. And something beautiful emerges. They begin to love quiet spaces. A morning where nobody intrudes, a room lit by warm amber light, and rain against the glass. An afternoon with just their thoughts drifting by. Not because they hate people, but because they've stopped treating constant external stimulation as a requirement for peace. And that's exactly what frightens others. Someone who no longer fears solitude is very hard to control through the threat of abandonment. They won't rush into every connection just to avoid being alone. They won't remain in exhausting environments simply because they fear the quiet that follows leaving. They come to understand that some forms of loneliness are lighter than spending decades in places that no longer belong to their soul. That's why empaths become unbreakable with age, not because they no longer need people, but because they finally know how to be alone without losing themselves. And the moment a human being stops running from their own inner silence, they develop a depth that very few external forces can still shake. And it's precisely when they stop fleeing inner stillness that they begin to realize something even more critical. Where they direct their psychological energy will slowly determine the entire quality of their life. Chapter 4. They master their psychological energy. The fourth transformation. They become unbreakable because they learn how to steward their inner energy. Some empaths spend nearly their entire youth in a state of psychic leakage. One distant reaction from someone keeps them awake all night. One disappointed glance weighs on them for days. They walk into a chaotic room and unconsciously absorb all that chaos, carrying it home like a soaked coat. The most dangerous part? They never realize that their attention itself is a form of life energy, and whatever repeatedly captures that attention is quietly consuming a piece of their soul's vitality. Jung spoke of libido not merely as sexual drive, but as the total psychic energy of the human being, the force used to love, create, obsess, hope, and endure. In other words, wherever your libido flows, that area of life grows. And this is precisely why young empaths often feel drained without understanding why. They continuously pour their psychological energy into bottomless places, hours wondering what others think, days tormenting themselves over one awkward conversation, years trying to resuscitate relationships already cold. They're like someone who leaves every window open in winter and then wonders why the house never warms up. Think of an ancient city under siege. The walls don't fail because of one massive assault. They fail when defenders are spread too thin across too many fronts. The psyche works identically. Young empaths often spread their energy across dozens of emotional battlefields. caring for too many people, worrying about too many problems, granting access to too many inner rooms. The result is a constant state of mental exhaustion whose true cause remains invisible. But age slowly changes this. After enough years of depletion, mature empaths arrive at a crucial realization. Not everything deserves their psychological energy. This is the turning point. They don't become colder, they become selective. When they were younger, one small conflict could hijack their peace for a day. One person disliking them could trigger endless self-analysis. But older empaths stop automatically pouring energy into every disturbance. They begin to distinguish between what genuinely deserves their presence and what is simply chaos seeking a host. Jung said, "Where your fear is, there is your task." Yet with age, empaths understand that not every inner battle deserves engagement. Some things only grow larger the more attention you feed them. Some people drag you deeper the more desperately you try to save them. Some environments drain the soul simply through prolonged exposure. That's why older empaths often carry such a calm presence, not because their lives contain less turbulence, but because they no longer allow everything direct access to the center of their being. They begin to understand that attention itself is a form of power, and someone who controls their attention becomes exceptionally hard to manipulate. The world grew used to the empath who was always available, always listening, always reacting, always emotionally present for every disturbance. But mature empaths become far more discerning. They no longer get pulled into endless emotional games, no longer spend hours explaining themselves to people who never truly wanted understanding, no longer waste their inner life on connections that only consume but never nourish. And this is exactly what unsettles many people. There's a natural image that mirrors this transformation. A young river often rushes wildly, crashing against rocks and carrying everything along. But as it nears the end of its course, the water grows wide, deep, and steady. It no longer needs noise to prove its power. Mature empaths are the same. They stop scattering psychological energy everywhere, and that concentration creates a strength that becomes incredibly difficult to shake. They become unbreakable with age, not because they stop feeling, but because they finally understand. Wherever they place their psychological energy, that place slowly becomes their life. And the moment an empath learns to stop draining their soul into things that only exhaust them, they begin possessing a form of inner power that very few can manipulate anymore. If somewhere in your own journey you're learning to protect your energy, if you're slowly realizing that not everything in life deserves your emotional investment, let this be your sign. Hit like and subscribe, not for algorithms, but as a small way for us to keep exploring the depths of human psychology together through the lens of Jung. Because sometimes, in a world that constantly scatters the mind, what we need most isn't more noise, but a space that allows us to slow down long enough to understand ourselves more deeply. And when an empath finally stops scattering their soul into every external noise, an even deeper process begins. They slowly return to who they truly are. Chapter 5. They finally become whole within themselves. The fifth transformation, perhaps the most profound, is this. They become unbreakable because they finally integrate into a unified self. The greatest tragedy of human life might not be a painful existence, but living too long inside a life that never truly belonged to you. Many people begin realizing this only after crossing half their years, when the roles that once helped them survive start feeling too tight for the deepest parts of their soul. When they're young, many empaths live in a state of inner fragmentation without even knowing it. One part of them craves freedom, while another is terrified of disconnection. One part wants to live honestly through raw emotion, while another struggles to maintain the image of being strong and unbothered. One part follows a deep inner knowing, while another is yanked backward by fear, old memories, and identities rooted deep into their sense of self. They resemble a room filled with too many voices, pulling the psyche in different directions simultaneously. Jung called this a common condition before individuation, the process of becoming a psychologically whole person. He believed that most people live as collections of opposing parts that have never been reconciled. One part longs to love, but fears pain. One part longs to be seen, but fears exposure. One part craves transformation, while another clings to an identity that died long ago. What sets mature empaths apart is that they gradually move through that reconciliation. Not in a single day, not through a few healing phrases, but through decades of confronting themselves in the hardest seasons of life. Some losses force a complete re-examination of identity. Some emotional collapses reveal that they've been living through personas that no longer feel real. Some periods feel as though the entire inner structure is crumbling, so that something more authentic can emerge beneath it. Jung wrote, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain. No true awakening happens without suffering." And for empaths, the deepest pain is often not losing other people. It's realizing they have lived far from the true center of their own soul for too long. A woman named Elena once shared with me that she spent most of her life feeling she had to keep achieving, keep pushing, keep becoming a more successful version of herself. But the older she got, the more a strange emptiness grew inside her, even though everything looked perfect on the outside. After many years, she understood the problem wasn't her career or her lifestyle. It was that she had never truly lived as an internally unified person. One part of her wanted to slow down, create art, and live peacefully, while another part kept driving her to chase an image she'd built decades ago. Only when she finally released that old identity and moved closer to her deepest self did peace begin to appear. That's exactly what makes empaths unbreakable with age. Not because they no longer feel vulnerable, but because they stop fighting themselves. They no longer feel the constant need to prove something to life. No longer feel pressured to become some idealized version to feel worthy. They begin living like people who have finally returned to their own inner orbit. And this creates an incredibly rare kind of strength. Because so much of human suffering doesn't truly originate from the outside world, it comes from the prolonged division within oneself. In the ancient art of metallurgy, there's a process where raw, brittle iron is heated and folded repeatedly until it becomes flexible, strong, and unified, true steel. Jung saw the development of the soul similarly, not becoming perfect but becoming whole. Mature empaths slowly move toward that wholeness. They no longer need to hide one part of themselves to protect another. They no longer live as fragmented identities jostling within the same person. They gradually become a unified whole, integrating emotion, intuition, thought, and deepest inner life. And this unsettles many people. Most human beings live in states of inner contradiction without ever truly confronting it. But standing before someone who has moved through that integration, people unconsciously sense something different. The presence of a human being who is no longer divided within themselves. Some people enter a room and grab attention with noise. Others create a powerful presence simply by standing there in silence. Mature empaths often become the second kind. Not because they try to seem mysterious, but because someone who has reconciled with themselves carries a depth that is hard to shake, and that is why they become unbreakable with age. Not because they rise above human pain, but because after a lifetime of being pulled in different directions, they finally become internally united with themselves. Conclusion. Perhaps what truly makes empathic people unshakable with age is not that they become stronger than others, but that after all the wounds, loneliness, and long inner battles, they finally become whole within themselves. No longer living as fragments torn apart in different directions, they begin carrying a profound inner stillness, the kind that only appears when someone has truly walked through their own darkness. And perhaps that's also what frightens people most, because a person who understands themselves deeply, who reads human nature clearly, and who no longer runs from their own interior world, becomes very difficult for the outside world to shake. If you've journeyed with me this far, you've likely recognized parts of yourself in these words. That's not coincidence. It's an invitation to continue this work of becoming. If these ideas resonate, subscribe and share this with someone who might be in the middle of their own quiet transformation. The path of individuation isn't loud or glamorous, but it leads to a life where you are no longer a puppet to external validation or inner chaos. Thank you for being here. Until next time, keep turning.